Not often do you find a piece of media that seems to hit every note just so well, especially a game, but Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is able to do that in its over 30 hours of gameplay. And these are my thoughts on why this is probably going to be the best game of the year. When I first seen this game, it did look interesting from a graphic standpoint, but I wasn't heavily invested and I didn't care a whole lot about it. Even up to the point of release, I wasn't even planning on making a video for this game. But after I started playing it, I knew that I just had to talk about it. And I'm glad that I took the time to not only just make a video, but also to play this game, because the storytelling, the world building, and the characters are just so extremely enjoyable. Rarely do I find a game, especially a turn-based RPG, where I care about the entire cast. But let me explain why this game is so great, starting off with the story. With very little spoilers, there's this being called the Paintress, where every year she paints a new number, and whatever the number is, your people die at that age. And it's your goal to actually stop the Paintress and stop your people from becoming extinct. The game does a great job at invoking so much emotion with the cast of characters in just a few minutes into playing the game. And even though this game can be pretty dark and somber at times, it still keeps you extremely interested and curious at what is going to happen next in the story. And just within the first 10 to 15 minutes, I was so invested. But even after that, it doesn't stop. As you play throughout the game for the next 30 or so hours, the story never just seems to fall off. You still seem to be heavily invested in what's going on around you. But the reason why it's able to do that is because of its very good characters and the great voice acting and portrayal that they have. Now, when the game starts off, you do start with fake Robert Pattinson, but the cast does seem to expound a little bit for a while, and each character just seems to be very interesting. In this game, I have to say not one character irritated me or I just got tired of them like other RPGs or JRPGs in the past. I found myself actively waiting for another cutscene to happen because of how interesting these characters interact with each other in this world that they've been thrown into, and even how they handle different situations as they arise. But one thing that I definitely loved about the characters is how that you would think a game that can be pretty dark, they still find a way to make them human and have actual real emotion and joy at times. Times where you would just go back to the camp and talk to the other characters to maybe uncover a little more about the story was actually a nice pleasant experience and a nice breakaway from a lot of the depression that this game does have. Now, maybe the aspect of every piece of dialogue may not be extremely interesting, but this game still does a very good job at building up the characters and keeping them interesting throughout the entire game. Now, the other huge part about this game is gameplay. The gameplay in this game takes the best of both worlds. You have your turn-based combat, but you also have your real-time combat. And this game sets the standard of what other RPG turn-based games should be. Where Final Fantasy says that we're moving away from that, this game heavily embraces it. Where it does have the traditional taking turns and attacking, it also throws into the mix where when you're getting attacked, you have the option to parry or block or jump out of the way of attacks, which will always keep you on your toes. So you're not just going to attack and put the control down and wait for the enemy to attack and hope that you don't take damage. You are constantly actively involved in the entire match. I love that this game has so many different enemy types, and because of that, I found myself trying to remember each character's movement so I know when the best time was to block, dodge, parry, whatever. And that's something I really don't have to do often in turn-based games. I really enjoyed having action points instead of MP in this game, meaning there's no MP bar that I have to worry about running out and then I can't use any type of moves or abilities anymore. What happens in this game is when you do attacks or you do successful dodge or parries, you can actually build up your action points that you can use to cast different abilities, whether it be healing, whether it be buffs or causing damage. It gives you an option to really stay in the fight. On top of this really good customization that the game has, we can add certain type of items to your character that will help you with fights later on in the game that will allow you to get action points even faster. Now, one thing that I also really enjoyed is how well the characters intertwine with each other. Once you start to level up your characters and unlock different abilities, you will actually start to chain different combos between each character. One of my character's ability can make the enemies weak against fire, where my other character's main attack was fire element moves. So you can chain certain things together, but even though you can chain certain things together, as you play different and harder enemies, they will start to mix things up that will force you to change your strategy, and I love that in this game. This game is constantly throwing a bunch of ideas at you, and they all just seem to stick. This shows the immense care that they have when it came to keeping this game interesting, and because it's only around 30 to 35 hours long, for the most part they get to the point right away, and there's not a lot of unnecessary bloat, if any. This game also takes aspects from games like Persona, where you do have the ability to aim and shoot, whether it's a pistol or like element fire at the enemy to break their shields. I enjoy the aspect that not every enemy can be handled the same way, where certain flying creatures you just can't run up and attack. You have to aim and attack them, but that takes away from your action points, where you may be trying to save up your action points to cast a heal or to maybe res a friend that went down. This game does a good job of keeping you on your toes. I also enjoy the fact that when you get good enough, you can even go into certain fights and never take any damage if you know how to parry and dodge really well. Now, the other huge thing about this game was the music. The music in this game is so beautiful. If you're a fan of games like Final Fantasy or games even like Stellar Blade, as far as its music goes, this game hits the note perfectly. Every single song was just so beautifully handcrafted and enjoyable. And it's not just music that plays in the background. It fully embraces whatever emotion or thing that's going on. And I fully understand why when I went to get music for this video, I looked at the soundtrack and it has 3 discs on it. The first 2 discs are between 60 and 68 songs, and the last one has 28 songs. On top of, there's other soundtracks around this game as well. I can really tell that they took the time to get really great music, and sometimes you just want to sit and listen to it because of how good it is. I have to say that this game probably has the best music that I have heard in an extremely long time. And where games like Final Fantasy and Stellar Blade are also really good, I don't know where any game actually comes close to the level of how good it is in every single environment. I can already tell you that the music alone is going to win some awards later this year. Map design also hits it out the park. Where this game is pretty linear, they do a very, very good job of allowing you to just go off the beaten path and find other things, whether it be items or even random boss fights. Early in the game, encountered a boss that I was way too underleveled for. Unfortunately, I didn't fight him, but I definitely want to go back to him later to see how well I fare. Now, the one issue I do have is that there is not really a map that's in the game. For the most part, they don't really explain a lot where you need to go. Now, if you go into the open hub area, it does show you where your objective is, but it doesn't necessarily tell you how to get there. The other part about that is, if there's something that I was too low level for, there's not really a way to save or keep track of where that enemy was that I wanted to fight because it doesn't really show up on the map. So a lot of it is trying to just remember where to go. Is that the worst, biggest deal? No, not really, because at the end of the day, I still enjoy the game so much. But you can easily find yourself getting lost, which again is surprising in a game that's this linear. But even though the game can be somewhat linear, it doesn't take any enjoyment away from the game. And even when you're not in fights, the game does do enough to kind of keep you focused, whether it's your characters talking, whether certain objectives that you need to jump or climb up, or even sneak up on enemies and try to attack them in the back. I also like how the game kind of blends in a Dark Souls element to it, where the game isn't necessarily difficult or hard in the aspect of a traditional Dark Souls game, but if you do get attacked and you go to a flag to heal back up again, it does spawn all the enemies back in the area. So that enemy blocking your path, you may have to fight him again. I know earlier on in the game that happened to me a couple of times, but it did help me level up. And the leveling system and mechanics, I have to say, are really well. It doesn't ever seem at any point in time that it's too much or over the top, or I feel overwhelmed when leveling up in this game. I felt that at the start of the game, you level up very quickly and you start to get a lot of different moves or abilities. Now it does slow up later on because you have to figure out how you want to spend your upgrade points, but it just never became too much for me. The thing is, this game is just all around beautiful across the board. Where there may be a lot of things that look creepy and very crazy, it never takes away from the extremely artistic viewpoint. I love the style that they went with this game, and I love how every area that you go into looks extremely unique, but still finds a way to look beautiful in a very destructive world. I was in total awe when I looked around, when I was in an underwater area but still had air, and seeing giant whale-like creatures swim above me. But this is what happens when you have a small group of people, around 30 people, make this game, and you could tell that they actually cared so much about what they were making. The thing is, There is no reason why anyone that plays games does not have this game in their library. And in a lot of respects, it shames big AAA companies that believe that they need to charge more for high quality games. This small studio was able to invoke more emotion and feeling out of me personally than any of these games with a $200 million budget. The storytelling is very good and interesting. The music is some of the most beautiful music I've heard in a game in a long time. The characters are interesting and I actually care about what's going on with them in this world. I want to see more games like this, but I want to see more from this studio. This game is the Baldur's Gate 3 of this year. And if you're not playing this game, you're doing yourself a huge injustice. I love that this game is available on pretty much every platform. No console wars, no sides, just a great game that we all can sit back and enjoy and talk to each other about. And people worried that this game would not get traction coming out just a few days after Oblivion, and is now ranked the highest rated game on Metacritic right now, with so many people playing this on Steam. Around 100,000 concurrent players, and that's not even counting Xbox or PlayStation numbers. But comment down below, what do you guys feel about this game? Have you picked it up already? Do you plan on grabbing it? Let me know. And as always, I appreciate you guys if you made it this far into the video, and I will catch you all in the next one. See ya.